This is the YOB ConvoCast, one-on-one conversations with your other brother's authors, community members, supporters, and friends.
What's up, friends, and welcome back for the last time. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get emotional by the end of this. Good thing I have an emotional robot with me to navigate these waters. As we finish the YOB ConvoCast Enneagram edition, this is our 9th episode. I mean, technically our 10th episode because we did an Enneagram YOBcast, and now this is our 9th Enneagram ConvoCast. We've gone all the way around the Enneagram, starting with type 8, going through the gut triad, and then making our way into the heart triad. And now in these last couple episodes, we've been delving into the head triad with the last 2 episodes, 5 and 6. And now today we tie a bow. We tie a bow on all of it with an Enneagram 7 conversation. And I am actually really glad that we're ending with a 7 because I teased in the last episode, the 7s are the fun type. They are the funnest type. They have the most fun. They have all the adventures. They have the popping Instagram. And it's just like, this is who I want to be. I want to be a 7 when I grow up. And you've heard him before several times. It's always great to have him back. Challenging to coordinate because he lives so far away. From across the pond, it's our other brother, Daniel. What's up, Daniel?
Hey.
Hey.
What's up?
Hey.
I feel like we need a song for the Enneagram series because originally I thought the Enneagram had something to do with Enya, the singer.
Right.
You know, she's like, oh. I feel like that should be the background theme song.
We should just have Enya playing in the background. You know, it's funny. It harkens back to when we did that YOBcast on the Enneagram, and Ryan joked when we had the sponsor for that episode, Ryan thought it was going to be the singer, the artist Enya, but it was not Enya. I forget who the sponsor was for this whole series. It's been a while.
Did she sing that song? Who can say where
I think so.
Goes?
Yeah, was that
like
Enya?
That should be the theme song.
Hopefully we don't get a copyright strike because of your singing. Shh, Daniel, be quiet. That's enough. But that is the soundtrack.
That song is very Enneagram 7, actually.
Is it? What is it like being a 7? Before we dive into the episode, how familiar are you with your 7-ness and your Enneagram nature? Because we have people who are in like all the way. They've gone layers deep into Enneagram digging, and then some who are just kind of surfacey, and there's no judgment either way. But I'm curious, I don't know that I know about you. How deep of a dive into the Enneagram have you taken?
Well, I'm not that in.
Okay.
I didn't get why you mixed up the numbers, not like in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 order. You had this.
I remember asking you. I remember asking you at the start of this series because I wanted to try to. I didn't have all the types figured out when I started who I would be talking to, but I knew I wanted to talk to you as a 7 because we have so few of them in our community. And I remember telling you that the 7 episode would be the very last episode. So you would have a couple months to prepare for this. And you had no idea why. Like, why are you starting with 8 and ending with 7? That makes no sense. Yeah. But I have a method to my madness.
I mean, I've read the most that I can read on the online sites and listened to the song with Sleeping at Last.
Yes.
And just like any 7, I went into it, really hard for, a few months. Okay. For a few months and then moved on. But like originally I really hated like the Enneagram. Like everybody in the YOB community was talking about it. I was like, what is this? And I think the worst part was when I went to the first retreat and everyone was introducing themselves with their Enneagram number and asking everyone else with their Enneagram number. I was like, ask my name. They would ask my name and they would ask my number, Enneagram number. I was like, okay.
We want to try to put you in boxes and figure you out, Daniel. Let us do it. Let us do that. No, it's funny. We don't do that anymore at retreats because I do remember doing that at the first. I think we did it at the first 2 retreats. It was a little maybe much, a little nerdy, but yeah, we just want to know. We want to know what makes you tick, Daniel. And the beauty of today is you get a whole hour to tell us why you are the way that you are. Isn't that amazing?
I didn't want to be boxed. I want to
I
be
know.
free.
That's what a lot of people, yeah, especially as a 7, longing for adventure, longing for new experiences. I can imagine that the 7 might want to escape the box maybe more than some of the other types. But before we get into it, Daniel, like anything up and happening in your life? Because it's been a while since you've been on the show. It's been so many months now. How are you?
Yeah, this year has been a lot of life admin for me. I got my driver's license this year.
Oh my gosh.
So I was taking driving classes. I've taken driving classes in the Philippines, but driving here in the UK is so much different because number one, it's the other side of the road, and it's so much stricter. So I got that.
So have you not been driving a car this whole time you've been living in the UK?
No.
Just like public transit, huh? And
yeah, I mean,
rides with friends and things?
Yeah, I mean, public transport, the tube here is really good. So you don't really need a car. And yeah, last Saturday, I don't know if you watched my Instagram stories, but it was a whole saga trying to renew my passport in the consulate. I was in the queue for 9 hours in the consulate.
Wow. Is it just all Filipino people at that place? Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's a Philippine embassy. And it was in central London. And well, I'm happy that the tourists are back. So the tourists in the double-decker buses with no roof on the second floor were like taking pictures of us. They think there's like a concert happening or a famous, supreme lunch or whatever. But it was just us in the embassy. So that was a struggle, just being in one place.
Are you legal now? Have you cleared all the hurdles? Or do you still have some more life admin?
Yes, I've renewed my passport, and I still need to wait for it for 3 months. Okay. The next life admin is very big. I am getting my permanent residency for the UK, which is equivalent to a green card for you Americans there. So yeah, that's a big thing after 7 years. Look at that, Enneagram 7. And living 7 years here in the
numbers
UK.
Of perfection.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're there for a while? Do you feel like this is where you are meant to be for the foreseeable future over there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think,
awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I think that's one of the discussions that we're going to have later. What was an escape for me in the beginning became something, God is using to train me to stay put and to persevere, because the Enneagram 7, it's really hard to stay put and to just be in one place for a long time.
Absolutely. That's so funny that you mentioned that, because on the last episode with Aaron, as we talked about his sexiness, he talked about taking the paid Enneagram test. If you go to the Enneagram Institute, they have a website and they have a $12 test, which I told him I'm surprised I never paid for it, because I love taking tests. I love especially personality stuff. And so since that episode, I told myself, this is my nerdiness coming through. I told myself, when I finish this series, I'm going to pay for the test. And this is going to be like a treat for me to take the official Enneagram test, which I did. I cheated. I was like, I'm already going to talk to Daniel. I know that this series will complete itself unless I get hit by a bus or something, which I haven't. I'm still alive. I'm still here. And so I took the test. And when I took the test, I was praying. I've always had this thought that I am just an unhealthy 7 in disguise. Like, forget the 4. Like, yes, I'm emotional and I'm sensitive and creative and all that stuff. But what you just said about this struggle to stay put and persevere, like, those are things that are hardwired into me, that there have been so many times when I read about the 7 that I like cock my head and I squint my eyes and I look at the words and I'm like, what if like, my life is so unhinged and I'm so unhealthy, and I've been reading this all so wrong, that I'm actually a 7, because one of the times in my life that I point to was when I lived on the road for 9 months and I was constantly going. And then the act of stopping and staying and living in a place for a year or years at a time now here in Asheville, North Carolina, like, that has been very difficult at times. And I've often wondered how much of my struggle parallels the 7 struggle. So all that to say, I took the test, and lo and behold, I am indeed still a 4. That hasn't changed. 4 was the clear winner. And I was shocked, though, that 7, because they rank them, all 9 types, they rank like your score. Number 7 was last for me. And I was so sad. I was like...
This just says, don't worship the Enneagram. Don't, make those words be your Bible.
I know.
Just use it as, a guide.
It's a guide, it's a tool, and that's what we keep emphasizing through this series, that it can be a great starting point to start to put language to things, these groanings of the heart, figuring out why you are the way you are and what are some tangible points of growth. But yeah, I was just laughing.
That's why I also found it hard to accept that I was a 7 in the beginning, actually, because I'm like, I can't relate to this. Like, what is this? But then in the end, I caved in, and yes, I am a 7.
You settled at home in the 7s, and I'm so glad you did, because there are so few of you in our community. I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a second, but just grateful for the 7s in my life, because they are so fun. You are so fun, Daniel. You bring an element of fun to our community. You headed up our virtual retreat a couple years ago, and it was so fun, and you were such a big reason why. So I just want to give you that affirmation of your 7-ness coming through in that situation.
Hand hearts.
The Enneagram, it's a tool that we use, and we have loved using it through this series, getting to know members of our community and just learning how we're all similar in matters of masculinity and sexuality, and also learning ways that we diverge and ways we're a little bit different. So I've just thoroughly enjoyed, if I haven't said that enough, thoroughly enjoyed everyone I've talked to, grateful for every guest I've had, including Daniel here today. Most of our Enneagram information in this episode comes from Truity.com, our faithful unofficial sponsor. Truity has no idea. I've been using their website for all this information. And then also EnneagramGift.com. Some additional information comes from there. So the 7, they're known as the Enthusiast. They just love life. They love adventure. They love experience. Their primary passion is gluttony, which when you think of gluttony, you probably think of food. You probably think of just gorging on all the foods, which can be an element of gluttony. But I love how the 7 encapsulates this gluttony, this sense of never enough. Like you constantly need more, whether it's more food or more drink or more life experience or more travel or more adventure or more friends or more whatever. Like I think that's the essence of gluttony. Does that sound true to you, Daniel?
Well, I definitely love the song Gyra.
Tell me about Gyra.
You are enough because it's hard.
So in Truity's study, to give the stats, they had 54,000 respondents. Type 7s were found up to make 9% of the population, 9% of women, 8% of men. And when you look at our YOB community to our super statistical polling on Discord and Facebook, it's somewhere between 3 and 6%. It's not a lot. There have been a few of you over the years, but they come and they go. Some of you stick around. Maybe a lot of them have left because it's just hard to stay put, like you were saying.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why.
I think I'm the only one.
You've been so committed, though, Daniel. You are definitely the most committed of all the 7s we've ever had. So that's pretty cool to have you here. And, I want to say something about this because I noticed a pattern developing here because we had one YOBber provide feedback for this episode. So first of all, huge thank you to that YOBber. I'm so glad that we went this entire series always having feedback. We always had a guest and we always had at least one person provide feedback. So that helped me feel reassured that we had a semi-balanced episode every single time. So I'm grateful for the YOBbers. But I did notice a pattern because in the types 3, 7, and 8 episodes, we only had one person provide feedback for each of those types. And each of those types represent only about, 2, 3, 4% of our community. Those are our 3 most underrepresented types. And coincidentally, here's more Enneagram nerdery. The types 3, 7, and 8 all make up the aggressive stance. There's these things called the stances in Enneagram. And so the aggressive stance, 3, 7, 8, typically when presented with conflict, you will be more likely to enter into the conflict. There are exceptions to it, but more aggressive, just more outgoing types. Aggressive sounds very hostile, but essentially just you're more outgoing than some of the other types are. versus, let's say, the 4s, 5s, and 9s, which I'm a part of, the withdrawn stance. We need time to collect ourselves. That's where you see a lot more of the introverts in our community, and the 4s, 5s, and 9s. And then you have 1s, 2s, and 6s, which make up another stance as well. But I just found that very interesting that 3s, 7s, and 8s definitely are our biggest minority in the community. And they all share this thing in common, that you are in the aggressive stance, which that's an Enneagram series for another day. But if anyone wants to research the aggressive stance Enneagram, do some Googling and check it out if it appeals to you.
There you go.
I found it
learning more Enneagram stuff today.
Oh, there's so
Have
many
you ever
layers.
considered to be an Enneagram coach, Tom? A business model for you could be like a Zoom Enneagram coach.
Yeah, we won't make this about me, Daniel. I appreciate you tossing it to me, but I have thought about it. I don't know if that's in my future for the foreseeable future, but who knows? I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people about it and digging deeper. It's just really fun.
The descriptions of the 7 that I read is we love thinking about new ideas. I know whenever we talk, I'm like, oh, we should do this for the YOB blog. We should do this.
Yeah.
We should do that.
I love that, because we need that. We need visionaries like yourself. We need people to inject new life into something that's hopefully stable and steadfast. We always need to evolve and grow, and that's something that the 7 definitely has a strength in. Absolutely. I'm going to read a statement from our one Yobber who provided feedback for this episode. I want to see if you feel the same way. He said, as he was providing feedback, he said, "I just want to say how exciting it is being in the rare minority of Yobbers who are 7s. It makes me feel so special and unique." Do you feel the same way, or do you feel sad that there are so few of you?
I don't care.
You don't care. Okay. You don't have emotions. You don't care. It's fine, right?
Yeah. Well, what I love about the Enneagram is really more than understanding myself is understanding other people. Because before learning about different Enneagram types, I would be like, why is this person acting this way? Like, it's so weird. I don't understand. Like, I would never act this way. But then I realized that, oh, they're actually an unhealthy 8. They're an unhealthy 4. And so yeah, that's what I appreciate in the Enneagram. The uniqueness of being a 7. I don't actually know if I want to be friends with other 7s. Well, it depends if we're gonna vibe and we do the same spontaneous stuff together. But if they're gonna be flaky and do their own thing, then we're not gonna be, good friends.
Yeah, for sure. There are challenges. There are benefits to befriending your own type, because you sort of come from life at the same angle and you approach life the same way, or a lot of similar ways, which can be a positive thing for a relationship. But then that can also be, I've experienced this with other 4s as a 4 myself, just feeling like it's too much. It's too much in one room. Like, you need different energy or different perspectives to complement each other.
To travel, I want to be the one, being spontaneous and not someone else doing their own thing and me going along with them,
Yeah, I get that. I just thought that was an interesting comment. It sounded very 4-ish, feeling so special and so unique. More than anything, 7s want to avoid feeling bored, sad, or uninspired. And so my question to you, Daniel, is, what are your thoughts on that? How does that line up with your life? And if you can think of examples or perspectives that relate to your sexuality and masculinity, I would love to hear the sense of avoiding boredom, avoiding sadness, avoiding uninspiration in life. What does that look like for you?
Gosh, yeah. Like when I finally came out of the closet as a 7 and accepted that I'm an Enneagram 7. I had like a flashback of like my entire life, and I've been like trying to determine, oh my gosh, this is like such a 7 thing to do. This is such a 7 thing to do. So basically, in high school, in the 4 years of high school, I went to 3 different schools.
Oh, wow.
Because I was just like talking about being uninspired. I was just so uninspired. It's like, this is not exciting. I don't like this. So I'm going to move to a new school. So freshman year was a different school, and sophomore year was a different school. And then the junior and the senior year was the same school. So yeah, that was one of the things that I kind of identified. Oh, that's such a seven thing.
Mm.
And yeah, just being, being here in London and on the other side of the world. Like I didn't understand when I was talking to my friends in uni. It was like, oh, let's go travel the world when we graduate. Let's go to Europe, and they're like, what? Like that's like really scary, uprooting your whole life. And I was like, that's so exciting. And I just didn't get why they weren't excited in the same things as me. So yeah, that was interesting.
I wanted to read this feedback from our community. Here's what he said. He said, before I even knew about the Enneagram, I must have been blind to what it was that motivated me, because it has only been recently that I've actually understood my motivations for how I made decisions. Exciting decisions were so easy to make and simple to understand. Non-exciting decisions were procrastinated and had to be trudged through. I wish I could tweak myself and make the non-exciting decisions to be as easy as the exciting ones to accomplish. I can start new projects all day long. Finishing the old ones, that's a totally different story. When it comes to sexuality, it makes so much sense in hindsight as to why I am attracted to men. Men always seem to be kept at arm's length away from me, so mysterious and unknown, so exciting. And yes, sexually too. Not being able to relate to other men in the stereotypical way, such as sports, hunting, and athleticism, only fueled the fires of attraction and excitement. Do you find men exciting, Daniel?
I think for me, one of the things that's kind of an anti-seven for me is apparently sevens tend to be more extroverted. I'm not.
Okay.
And I think that's because of, growing up being a closeteer
Mm-hmm.
where, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of suppression, there's a lot of self-condemnation and all of that. So I became an introvert. So in terms of relating that to my sexuality, I think part of why I'm not an extrovert is because of my sexuality. People think I'm an
Interesting.
extrovert, but that's when I get close to people. But like, if I'm not close to people, if I'm in a big room, I'm very happy, being quiet, being a wallpaper,
Mm.
the perks of being a wallpaper.
Wallflower, but yes, I get same sentiment.
I know, little joke.
That's funny. That's funny.
And yeah, but when I get to know people in a more deeper way, that's when I become more extroverted, and I'm like Shrek. I have a lot of layers.
Yes, yes,
So
you do.
I think that's one of the things that sexuality ties into my Enneagram 7-ness, and how it affected me being an introvert rather than an extrovert.
Was that for you? Maybe you said this and I missed it, but like for you growing up and feeling like you had to suppress a lot, do you feel like that was culturally, like where you grew up, or part of your family dynamic, or where did you learn that consciously or unconsciously?
Like I remember seeing a video of myself having fun and like, I don't know, I think dancing or singing. And with my cousins, we were watching the video with my cousins, and they were, wow, it's like a therapy session now.
I know.
And they were
Peel back
making
the layers.
fun of me on how I
Oh,
like, how do you describe that? A bit, is it limpy or more like soft or whatever? And I remember that was like a defining moment for me. It's like, oh, I'm going to suppress myself, and I'm not going to express myself as much because, it's apparently people make fun of me when I do that. So wow, that's just an interesting memory that you brought up there, Enneagram coach.
just call me coach. This is like a sports game. I mean, I can resonate with a lot of that too. Like noticing film of myself, getting excited, my voice rising. Like it's funny now that I do all these hundreds of podcasts now, because I used to hate the sound of my voice, because when I got excited, my voice would go up, or it sounded gay, or whatever the criticism was, self-criticism was. And so I would have to go back to stoic Tom. So I resonate with that a lot, as also a child growing up. It's so fascinating. I'm glad we have an introverted 7, because I think that is the stereotype. The stereotype of the 7 is that they are all extroverts, always love being with people, always love having a crowd around them and people to tell jokes to and elaborate stories to. And so again, beauty of the Enneagram, it's like not necessarily one size fits all. There's all these different, like people have wings and people have different instincts and people have different, even sub-personalities, introverted, extroverted, whatsoever. So there's lots of variance here. So I'm glad we have you on for some variety, because most of the 7s in my life are very extroverted. So it is nice to talk to a fellow introvert like yourself.
I think though my 7ness came out in my introvertedness. So one of my favorite video games is The Sims. So I lived my 7ness through The Sims.
That's so funny.
Basically, my mom enrolled me in this state school for nerds for 1 year, and the good thing about that is they gave us an allowance every month. So they paid us 500 pesos every month, and every time that I got my allowance, I bought a new Sims expansion pack.
Oh,
and I just, I traveled the world in The Sims. I made a lot of friends in The Sims. And I had boyfriends in The Sims when I couldn't have in real life. So
that's so funny. And now what a beautiful picture of like you travel to all these places virtually, and then since then you've literally traveled around the world and made friends around the world. Like what a cool journey that it's been for you, and you're still going. Your journey's not over. Like what a beautiful thing. But that's fun. So for you, there was never enough Sims expansion packs. Like you could have kept going, right?
And literally I remember like that time when you buy a game, it's like multiple CDs, and the whole game is like the size of a VHS. It's so huge. And so it just filled my whole closet.
A closet full of Sims expansion packs and sexuality. That's so interesting. That's a little taste, the motivations, the excitement value of the 7. Moving to fears, Daniel, this is always a fun pivot to make in these episodes. So 7's fear, we've already started to touch on it a little bit, but the fear of the 7 is getting stuck in a rut and missing out on the good life. They cope with this fear by constantly seeking out exciting, novel, and fun experiences. So I wanted to read the feedback from this episode and then get your thoughts on that, or if any other thoughts come to mind. This fear of missing out, he says, is one of the main reasons I figure I'll likely never marry. There's so much life to live and people to spend time with. I don't want to miss any of it, especially not to be tied down to one, parentheses, eventually unexciting person for the rest of my life. If I could make myself get excited about the daily blah of life, it would be nice. And again, so much about what he just said, I resonate with as not a 7, as the Enneagram Institute has decreed upon me, because I get that. I get that hesitancy to not marry. Obviously, this person is very single. How does that cross with you?
So I don't know about your culture, but here in London or maybe in Europe, coupling with someone means you have a travel buddy. So that's like, I don't know if that's part of their idolatry of what they view marriage as, but when I speak to my friends, one of the main things that they want to be coupled up is they want a travel buddy. So I can't relate to that in terms of being tied down and married to someone. Because there's a lot of people here as well, like also like Kiwis or Australians. There's a couple moving here for a year and going around Europe. And so that's like one of the things that I'm jealous of, actually. I guess the fear of missing out is missing out on that, missing out on all those adventures that we could go together, make memories together, take pictures together. And so, yeah.
That is an interesting perspective because I haven't spent much time in Europe. You know, I went to the UK for a summer in college. That was cool. And then I went to Ireland a few years ago with a friend for a week, and that was great too. But I've never spent like extensive time like feeling out European culture. That's a trip that I would love to take someday, is just spend a summer in Europe or something. Because I do get the sense, because there are so many different countries and cultures so close together. Like I imagine that travel is hardwired more into people overseas than it is in America. I mean, you have, you know, America's a beautiful, vast place. People go on trips in America, certainly. But I know there are also a lot of people who are just very comfortable, who have their jobs, who just stay in their hometowns their whole lives. Like I've encountered so many of those people in my life. So I get the sense that could absolutely be a cultural difference just between America and Europe, to pick two places. Are you able to travel by yourself and enjoy yourself, or do you get that sense that you're missing out when you talk about couples like that?
I was going to talk about that in the security part.
Oh, teaser. So let's not go there yet. Let's hold on. Let's hold on to that.
But yeah, actually, with this fear thing, one of the things that I read about the seven that I didn't like in the beginning was the greatest fear was the fear of pain. And I was like, I face pain like head on. Like I, you know, when I wanted to deal with this quote unquote gay thing, you know, I really immersed myself into the books, and I even, you know, went to the YOB retreat 2 times. And I remember my friends like telling me, are you sure you're going to go to this retreat with, you know, random people? Like you might get killed or something. And I was like, no, it's exciting. You know, I'm going to be in the woods with the random gays. Like, what's the worst that could happen? But then I realized that actually I was doing that because that's my way of trying to stop the quote unquote pain and not to have that pain anymore. So like I remember I went to therapy because I was having these like anxiety attacks, and I was like to my therapist, so like this is what's happening. I want to dig what's the root of it. I want to know it now, and I want to get through it like as fast as I can. And so I realized actually what I'm trying to do is trying to solve the pain, avoid the pain by solving the pain. But pain is included in life, and sometimes, you know, you can't avoid it. You just have to, you know, go through it.
Do you, as somebody who, as it is in the description, like this fear of pain, are you somebody who would classify yourself as a workaholic, or somebody who wants to constantly have things on the calendar, things to do, so that you don't have to be alone with yourself? But I know you also mentioned being an introvert, and so I'm curious how that resonates with you, or how much of it resonates.
Yeah, so not much. So basically, I moved to London, to travel. So basically, my first year, I've calculated that I went to 35 cities around Europe. My first year in London. And just before, in 2019, the last retreat that I went, I was in a different country every month. So I think in May was a YOB retreat, right? So I went to the US in May, and I said to myself, oh, like I've been around the East Coast before during the first YOB retreat. I'm not going to travel around as much. But then I ended up going to like 7 cities or something.
You couldn't help yourself. It's in your nature.
And then, so that's May. And then in June, I went to the Czech Republic for another gay retreat, actually, and for my birthday, some birthdays here. And then July, I was in Israel. And then in August, I was somewhere else. Yeah, I was travel is like my escape. Then the pandemic changed it all. I haven't flown for like 2 years now. So
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation too. Like, how has COVID disrupted your life as far as this person who loves to travel? It's definitely affected mine as someone who also loves to travel. I was just basking for a moment when you were sharing all that, because I was like, this is why I want to be a 7 when I grow up. Like, I want to go to a different country every month. I want to go to 35 cities in a year. Like, that sounds like you're living my dream. But I also can recognize a dark side to that is if you are avoiding your life, if that's part of it too. Like, you have to find a balance in everything in life. It's not bad to travel. It's not bad to experience new things, but you also have to tend to your garden, whatever is in your garden, whatever you're growing in your heart, in your relationships, in your home. And so it's good, as always, to find balance in life.
Actually, the main reason why I got a driving license this year, because I want to drive to a different city every weekend. So yeah.
That's exciting. I'm so excited for you. Our little Daniel's growing up, you guys. He's got a driver's license and he's ready. He's ready to see the world, as if he hasn't already seen it, but he's going to see more of it. Sevens in stress go to 1, the reformer or the perfectionist. And here's what that looks like. Stress causes 7s to have a black and white outlook on life. During periods of stress, 7s usually begin to take on qualities of 1. They lose their upbeat and fun outlook on life and become more pessimistic. 7s will be argumentative and blame those around them. And I joked with Jesse on our 1 episode. Our 1's the judgiest type, and he was completely owning it, I think, from what I recall, saying, yes, 1's are the judgiest type because they are by nature self-critical, so they will also be externally critical as well. And so I'm curious in your times of stress, how much of that resonates with you? Do you feel like a judgy person?
Well, I can relate to that when I'm angry.
Okay. Yeah.
So when I'm hungry, I become angry, and I basically point out all of your flaws. But so my friend has told me that, and they're like, we gotta keep you well fed at all times. But yeah, I think when I'm not in a good place, I just point out everything that's wrong. I can relate to that, especially in the church. Oh my God.
Ooh, tell me more. I'm going to sit back and just let you talk about the church. What's wrong with the church?
But basically I've confronted leaders and stuff.
And spill the tea. What is it?
And actually, the one thankful thing that I have that I appreciate now is, I think I've updated you that in the previous podcast. They just moved churches and they're very open. They're very open to, and they're the ones who ask for feedback on things. And lately we've been doing a series on sexuality. And so I kind of sent an email to them, but not just an email telling them oh, this is making me really anxious, blah, 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 blah. And they actually set a meeting with me, and I've met with the pastor a couple of times, and I still have a couple of meetings set in the future. And, they just asked me, how can we do better? And boy, I have, a billion answers to answer that. So that's one thing I'm thankful for.
That's awesome. So are you pretty open with your story, with your sexuality, with certain people in your church then?
Yeah. I mean,
that's great.
Yeah. The thing about, coming out is you have to keep coming out. So, one 7 thing that I do as well is I have multiple small groups in church.
You can never have enough small groups, right?
And, some of them I've already told, some of them I can't even be bothered. If it comes out in conversation, then, I'll talk about it. But if not, let's just enjoy life.
Was it you that called yourself a small group slut?
No, you're the one who called me a small group slut.
I didn't call you that. Did I? I have to check the records. I don't know if that was on a recording or if it was on a private conversation. But yeah, you love your small groups, and it speaks just to your essence of more, just more. Why have one small group when you can have 7?
Or how many every night?
Yeah, have one for each night of the week for sure. It's so funny because Matthew, who's an 8, I think he identifies as a 7 wing, But he's the same way. He's got every time I visit him, there's like 7 different church things we have to go to. He has all these different churches, all these different friend groups that he goes to, that he attends to. That's not a knock on him. I think that's exhausting to me if I thought about that kind of life in my life. But for someone like him, someone like you, that clearly brings you life. And that's really cool. It's so fun. I had to read this comment too from Rafia because he didn't have much to say on sevens and stress, but he did have this to say, hearkening back to our Enneagram 1 episode. He says, on that Enneagram 1 episode, I love a good callback. This is fantastic. I love this comment. He said this, on the Enneagram 1 podcast, you mentioned that an Enneagram 7 would be a terrible college dorm RA. I just want to say, I might not be the most organized in a position like that, but there would be a lot of fun times that happened in that dorm, which I have to give credit to sevens in an RA position being in charge of.
What is an RA?
So it's abbreviated for a resident. What is it? A resident assistant or something like that. Basically, it's just the person in the dorm who's in charge of, or like who keeps order in the dorm. So he might have 10 people or 20 people or however big the dorm is. Yeah, you have like a residential director who might be in charge of a whole building, and then an RA who might just be in charge of a floor or something, basically. Mm-hmm. So the RA, yeah, they have to be organized because Jesse mentioned on the 1 episode that he was an RA and that he, as a 1, he has everything in black and white, all the rules, all the ways to keep order in this place. And I joked on that episode that a 7 would be the worst because they just want to have fun all the time. So maybe the worst is not the right language to use because it would absolutely be a fun time in that college dorm. And, a 7, when they're healthy, when they're growing, we're going to get to that really soon. I'm sure they would be able to keep some order too. I think you can find both. Like your life isn't just total chaos, right, Daniel?
Reminds me of the time when I was volunteering for a team at church. And I don't know why, but it just happened that my leader assigned me to organize all of the socials. So I did all of the socials. We did darts, we did pub quizzes, we did what else? Well, the most unique one was like axe throwing.
Yeah, axe throwing.
But then speaking of stress, when I was stressed and I was really angry at my leader, I was like, I'm going to email your boss and say all of these things.
So there's the argumentative side coming out in stress. So before we move to security, Daniel, I wanted to ask you, coming out, that conversation has come up a lot in these episodes, the coming out to yourself, coming out to other people. I imagine coming out produces some level of anxiety, some level of stress. And I'm just curious from your 7 lens, can you think of any times, any people or yourself for that matter, when you had to come out? Just like walk me through the stress of that or the anxiety of that and how that played out in your life. Because I would be curious to hear how a 7 comes out. Like you mentioned a little bit about you just wanted to do all the things and go to the retreats and do this. So like, how did you first approach coming out as you were coming to terms with your sexuality?
I'm thinking about all of the, because I have a blog series. That
you do. Shout out to Daniel's blog that is still ongoing.
Yeah, basically I came out when I was 18 to my pastor. And then 19, I came out to my parents. We've never talked about it since. And then at 20, I went to the other side of the world and lived there and never came back. And so I think that's basically the main thing why I'm in London, is to escape from all of that, escape from the things that we're talking about, the sadness, the suppression, the shame. And that's why I'm here. Like when I moved here, I was ready to be side A. I was like, oh, it's London, they're pretty progressive there. So, right. I might find churches that are side A. And I did, before I found YOB, I found other groups that are side A. I even went to like Christian festivals with them and everything. But, it didn't, it wasn't for me. But then going back to what I said, like what I used to escape, God used to kind of teach me how to plant fruits and persevere and all of that, because by being here, I'm on a visa. Because talking about my permanent residence, like being on a visa means that I'm tied to one workplace and I can't move. I can't, I can't just quit randomly. I can just do a rage quit, which I wanted to do like a lot. Like, there's big times where I'm like twice or three times a year. So I really want to quit and I can't because I'm tied to this visa. So that's, I think that was also a God thing, like directing me, kind of like working with me with my personality type, wanting to escape and to travel. But in that, God works with, work with your personality, and he taught me how to persevere in that stress.
Yeah, I love the blending of both, of like being able to travel so much, to travel so far away from home and have a fresh start, but then to have something in place, a system in place that kind of forces you now to stay put for a bit and to have opportunities to have little mini escapes like traveling like you like to do. But that is a beautiful picture of just God satisfying both elements, the desire for spontaneity and newness, but then also stability and structure, which we all need as well. So that's beautiful. Very well put. I'm glad you found YOB, Daniel. I can't imagine this community. Everybody listening, send Daniel some love when you hear this episode, because can you imagine if you had never found this place? I just can't. It's hard to imagine.
Can you believe?
Can you believe? The final turn in this episode, Mr. Seven, is going to Seven's insecurity, which is such a fun shift because it almost, from the outside observer, it almost feels like this is a downgrade. Like from the vivacious, like lively, exciting, enthusiastic 7 to go to security, you take on qualities of 5, which are the investigator. And I just love this turn for you. I love this turn for the 7 because it's so dramatic. During periods of growth and security, 7s become more like 5s. They experience life on a deeper level. 7s can be more comfortable being alone with themselves in silence. It is easier to find their meaning and purpose in life during periods of growth and security. So like, from the outside, it almost makes me, because I have been very clear throughout this episode that I want to be a 7. So to me, it almost looks like when a 7 tones it down and becomes more like a 5, it almost feels like, wait, where did all your mojo go? Where did all your excitement and enthusiasm go? But I think for you, and especially as an introvert, I'm sure you can appreciate those times when you are by yourself and you do have time to collect your thoughts and to take a deep breath and to whatever you do to recharge and grow or learn, whether it's reading or watching movies or where you don't have to be on the go all the time, where you can take some time for yourself and just chill out. Like I imagine that's got to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's like one of the instances that I reminded of was when I went to David's tent. Basically, David's tent is a 72-hour nonstop worship session in the middle of nowhere, England. And in the beginning, I was really stressed because I'm like, I can't do anything else here. Like it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no signal. There's no preaching. It was just worship. And I was so used to like, a set list in worship, like 1, 2, Psalm 1, 2, 3, 4. But there it's like very flowy. Sometimes one song is like 20 minutes without lyrics. It's all spontaneous. But like at some point it kind of like clicked that, it's just, all about spending time with God and enjoying time, in his presence. And I think that experience really changed my perspective on, not having anything to do. Like one of my stresses is when I go on holiday, for example, like to the Philippines and the beach, and I'm like, I'm just sitting here doing nothing. And like, I need to do something. But then, that experience in Davidson just reminds me actually, this is also part of life, enjoying nothing, but also in God's presence. And I kind of felt that as well, even though it was an escape. I kind of felt that, going to the YOB retreat, or like going to 35 cities in Europe, it's all by myself. Yeah, that's when I was like, wow, like the beauty of the, beauty of creation, beauty of humans, hotties, just, yeah, just enjoying that.
Yeah. The word that comes to mind is savor. Like you're not just sipping all the different places or experiences or people, but you're actually stopping to savor them. Like you're letting it linger on your lips. I'm getting very like vivid with my imagery right now. But to take time to savor and to enjoy something, someone, someplace, like that's a beautiful thing, and it comes easier or more difficult to certain people to stick with that, to stay with that. Here's the feedback on this one about security. Our Yabber said this: I do certainly show 5 tendencies in health. Although I enjoy silence, not so much being alone. I do find it exciting to be with the people I love. I have become better about being alone, although I'd happily avoid it if possible for the rest of my life, but not to just be with the same person. As far as being a 5 in health and friendships, I guess that would be that I am more focused on being content with the deep friendships I already have and not wanting the excitement of jumping from one friendship to the next repeatedly and neglecting the depth of established friendships. That's a very interesting perspective. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like, how do you approach friendships? Is that something that sounds familiar to you? Like, do you find it exciting when you meet a new friend, and do you have this desire inside of you to connect with more friends or more men in particular, if we're just focusing on that aspect with masculinity and sexuality, or do you focus on the friendships you already have?
Yeah, I think this is where I diverge, because
Okay.
I really love deep friendships, and I long for deep, committed, long-term friendships. I don't know if maybe it's because, I'm living here in another country without, family or anything, that I'm looking for people that can be my family here. And that's the thing about London. It's very seven. Like, people are so transient. Like what I said, there would be, that um, Australian couple, Kiwi couple, or even American couple who's here for a year or who's studying their masters and then travel around and then go disappear.
Yeah.
Or like people from the country who go, experience the big city for a while and then, realize it's not really for them and go back. So it's really hard to find a lasting community here. And that's like one of the things that I'm working on now, and one of the things that I desire. But I guess, yeah, it's community so we could have fun together.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine, to focus the conversation on side B people, particularly the single celibate people in our community, that that can be a huge heartbeat, especially the older we get. Like, you just want to know, like, who's there for you, who's in your life. I know I feel that the older I get. Like, something pivotal happened when I turned 30 and I entered this new decade. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I almost felt like I could excuse myself for traveling around as much as I did, because I lived on both sides of the country and constantly kept moving. And then all of a sudden I'm 30 something years old, and the thought of staying put is terrifying. But then also, who's staying put with me? Like, are there other people, because I'm not coupled to somebody? Like, is there going to be a group of people that's there with me through not only the months, but the years and the decades? Like, that's a very daunting thought. And so I share that concern, and I share that curiosity, I guess, that you talk about. Asheville isn't quite London, but it's a transient place itself, because it's very touristy. It's very niche. Like, there's not a lot of people that I've found that stick around. So it'll be interesting to see where we both are in the years to come in our respective transient cities that we call home right now.
I'm curious. Well, that's where we went to the sad part. Let's go back to the happy part.
Yes.
I'm curious why it's called the Investigator. Can you tell me more about that, Coach?
Coach, yeah.
when you go to security.
When you go to 5, yeah. So the Investigator, when we talked to good old Will Cooper, he quoted Kierkegaard, and he loves books. He loves, theology and philosophy. And so, so the Investigator, their primary drive is they just want to learn more. I mean, there's a similar, their passion isn't gluttony, but there is this desire for more in the form of knowledge, in the form of connecting all the dots and being well prepared for situations. And so that's kind of how I've always interpreted the 7 going to 5 is that you find your way of recharging. And so whether it is reading a book, whether it's watching a Netflix documentary, like I've known 7s who love Netflix documentaries because they just want to sit down, learn, not have to go. It almost satisfies this thing inside of them to travel or to go somewhere, but they can sit at home, not go somewhere, but then still get something from it and like learn something. And I think it's that piece of growth where it's like you don't have to necessarily always be going somewhere or doing something to grow.
I think where I can relate to that is with the Investigator part. Like I also try to invite other people to investigate with me. Like just this month, my love language is giving books. One of my love languages is giving books. So
Yes.
I've given the same book to 3 people this month. So it's kind of like, so we can be excited on one thing together and, just explore this thing together.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, it just reminded me when I learned first about the Enneagram, like I became one of those Enneagram people who talked about the Enneagram all the time. And I made all my friends, take the test. I wanted to know their number. I wanted to even like my closer friends, there's like in one of the, websites, there's like how healthy you are, the level of healthy you are. It's like, oh, how healthy are you? So I was like really, really, really entrenched on getting to know them as people. And yeah, I was super excited to explore more in terms of getting to know people in that way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's such a great parallel because you've mentioned the YOB retreat multiple times in this episode, which makes my heart smile just to hear you reference that experience, the retreats that you've come to, because that is the essence of it. Like we are all navigating this journey together. It's a lot of uncharted waters in a lot of ways culturally. And so it's just fun. It's fun to share these blogs, share these podcasts, share these Discord posts, and even share retreats and Zoom calls and other places that we can connect and to do it together, to not have to be by yourself, to share this experience of living this life together. It's a beautiful thing.
Sad that I can't go this fall.
I know. This is 2 years in a row, Daniel, that you are not with us. I'm starting to get concerned that a trend is developing.
But one thing we are starting a Zoom. We've started a Zoom for Europeans, for my time zone.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah, we haven't done a YOBcast in a while to have like announcements, because that is an announcement in our communities. We've been having European-centric Zoom calls for the last few months, and it's been really fun to get people from Germany and the UK and South Africa, and a lot of Americans for that matter. So like it works out really well that we get like people on their lunch break in America and Canada showing up as well. So like what a fun thing.
We could make our own retreat here in Europe.
Let's do that. Honestly,
so if you're a lurker out there, please come and join our next European Zoom.
European Zoom, soon to be European retreat. Look at you already vision casting. This is what you do. This is what the 7 does. This new experience of Zoom calls isn't enough. Now we need a European retreat too, which I would totally fly across the ocean to go to. Absolutely. Someday, let's keep that conversation going. Before we go, Daniel, this is how you love a 7. We always close our episodes with some suggestions. If you know a 7 in your life, if you have that enthusiast, here's how you can love them well. So let me read this list for you. And then if you can think of any other ways, Daniel, that we can love you and other 7s well, please feel free to offer those. If you love a 7, Be a gentle reminder to them that acknowledging their emotional pain will not kill them, but that it is a necessary and cathartic part of life, one that will actually save them from their overdoing it in the long run. Gently offer your 7 freedom, time, and space to do this processing alone, and they will increasingly step away from their own wild planning and choose to love you time and again with much loyalty and depth. Though it may not seem as though their joy ever has a landing place, it does. And it's very helpful for them to have a safe place with you to rest, as well as to process deeply buried anxious feelings. It also helps if you can stay a little while to help them feel safe, to crack open some actual emotions besides joy or anger and admit to sadness and anxiety. Also to realize that these things too have an end, can be worked on. And of course, as they will see for themselves, that joy will always return, even if it looks different across seasons. Have we unlocked some of your sadness and anxiety beyond your joy and your anger today?
I mean, I think it's just a life of every person, the trauma that comes with it.
Yes, travails that come with this life, but a lot of joy too. And that's something that I appreciate about 7s like yourself and other types in our community too. It's one of our values for a reason. Like we made a shift a couple years ago where we introduced a new value because we used to have 5 values on our YOB website. Now we have 7. And one of them is joy. And that is it was such an overlooked one.
Yeah, I led the Joy Tribe in the first digital retreat.
That's right. Joy Tribe represent. Because that's the thing, like you said it so well, like the side B life, not necessarily easy, not necessarily full of happy moments all the time, but are there happy moments? Are there times of more than just happiness, like deep residual joy, for following Christ and like having this kinship with one another, people around the world that we can do this life with? Like absolutely, there's definitely joy. And all you have to do is come to one retreat. We're really giving a shout out to the YOB retreat, but like, come to one retreat, and I dare you to come to that retreat and not leave without one moment of joy, at least one, because I promise you will. You will have one moment of joy before the weekend's over, and it's a beautiful thing.
Can I say this?
Say it.
Happiness isn't always about a happy penis.
What is that? Where did that come from? Is that a saying?
No, I just made it up.
Oh my gosh. Are we going to end on a penis joke? Is that how we're ending this whole series?
Yes, this is YOB.
This is YOB. This was our Enneagram series. Good night, folks.
This is the YOB ConvoCast. We talk about masturbation, talk about penises, and all of that stuff.
Yes. That's so funny. It was so I was not expecting that. It was so out of left field.
You gotta edit that out.
No, I have to keep that. That's a keeper. Thank you for, again, just bringing so much joy to this episode, to this community, Daniel. We will miss you at the YOB retreat, but we keep having virtual retreats now, which you show up for as well, which makes it easier if you live on the other side of the world to come to. So maybe next virtual retreat we'll see you again there. Friends, this is getting emotional now because this is it. This is the end of the series. I just want to thank Daniel. I want to thank all of the guests all around the Enneagram. This has been an idea in the works for a couple of years now. I always thought it would be cool to talk about the Enneagram in some sort of extended format. I didn't know what it would look like a couple of years ago, but as I was planning out the year and planning out what we could do this year, the more our community's grown, the more I looked around and thought it could be possible. We could do this. We could talk to one person representing each type. And some of the types are harder to come by, but it was really fun to just make the rounds during this series and to connect with people that you've heard many times before and people that you haven't heard ever at all. And it was great to get to know them and get to hear their story and how they see the world and how they've processed their sexuality and how they relate with other men. So this has just been really fun.
You could reframe that as this is just the start of a wider conversation.
There we go. Thank you for just helping me see the sadness of something ending, which is how I'm just bent to look at something. This is probably why I'm not a 7. Versus, oh my gosh, we could do this again and talk to people, learning about other aspects of their Enneagram types, or other aspects of their personality types. I had somebody joke with me the other day, you should do a Myers-Briggs series. And I was like, I don't know if our listeners will put up with a 16-part series, but who knows? Never say never. But yeah, no, I love that your perspective is to see the bright side, the silver lining of this series. Not that it's ending, but that this is just potentially just beginning. I love that. And I love this series. And thanks also not just to the 9 guests I had, but to all the feedback, because we got so much feedback on these episodes. I was a little nervous that nobody would respond, to be honest, or at least on some of these types, but we had somebody respond on each of them. And a special shout out to the 2s, who I think had the most feedback of all the types on these episodes. But so many people from type 8 all the way to type 7 provided feedback, which made the episode so much more robust and dynamic and full. And so I'm just super grateful for all the yobbers listening who took the time, because those things take time to just sit down and collect your thoughts and type them out. I just really appreciate it. It was so touching to see people care about this series as much as I did, or to some comparable level that I did. So thank you, yobbers, for your feedback, for your presence in our community. I'm just so blessed. I'm so amazed that this is our community. I love us. Daniel, I can't wait to check in with you again sometime. And
yeah,
I'm hoping, I don't want to.
I mean, if I can't go to the US, maybe you could go to the UK.
I know. I was saying, like, next year, I feel this inkling that next year is a year of momentous travel for me. I mean, I started to travel a little bit more this year than in years past, but potentially, yeah, in the year to come, I could easily see myself hopping on a plane.
We prophesy that in the name of Jesus.
If I visit, like, you don't have to worry about traveling alone, Daniel. Like, I will gladly travel with you somewhere.
Yes.
Find a destination and let's chart it. Maybe you'll have a cute little car at that time and we can drive somewhere.
A little Mini Cooper.
You're a driver now. Congratulations again. That's so exciting. All right, friends. Well, I don't know what's coming next, but until we cast our next convo, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, see you guys on the other side. Bye, friends.
And remember, happiness isn't always about a happy penis. Goodbye. See you next time.
Oh my goodness.